In this training video, I'm going to show you 3 questions that you can use when you call outbound leads or any type of lead from a lead list. Could be from an ad that will actually help you cause your prospect to let their guard down and actually open up to you rather than trying to get rid of you or say not interested or call me back later. So come to the vibe board and I'm going to show you how to do this, okay? Now, the first thing I want to show you, this is going to really help you, is understanding that there is a wrong way to do this that is going to cause you to play the numbers game where you just have to go through a ton of leads to make a sale, or if you're an SDR to make an appointment. And there is a right way to do this where you can drastically reduce the numbers game because it's more about the skills game. Okay, so hone in here, pay attention, very important. Now, first of all, I'm going to show you the wrong way to do it so you can kind of see maybe if you were taught this way to do it, maybe you can change that. Because have you ever wondered why, let's say that you're in a company that has 10 salespeople or 100 salespeople or 500 or 2,000 salespeople or whatever it is, how you're all using the same script, saying the same things, selling to the same type of prospects, yet there's some salespeople that are way up here, others that are here, and others that are here. Well, why is that? If you're saying the same thing, using the same script, talking to the same prospects, okay? Something to ponder. So I'm going to show you, okay? Now, let's say I'm just going to show this as generic here, and I'll show you some differences to make it industry specific for you here as we get towards the middle and the end, all right? So the average salesperson might say something like this. And like I said, this is just generic. Yeah, is Annie there? Yeah, hey, Annie, it's James Miller with XYZ Company. I saw you requested some information about our blank services. Is this a good time to talk? That's one approach. Or I saw you request some information about our blank product or services. Do you have 2 minutes to talk about our XYZ solution? That's another approach I've seen. Or request this information about our blank products and services. How are you doing today? Okay, that is typically, there's some variances from different industries and some different things you might have taught, but that is pretty much how the average salesperson calls an outbound lead. Now, when I say outbound lead, that means somebody that has requested information, okay? They might have, let's say if you sell life insurance, they might have filled out some form, right? That they didn't really know what they were requesting, but they knew somebody was going to call them back. They just didn't know when or who it was. They might have put in their name, phone number, email. Let's say if you run ads on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you run ads, IG, and they fill out their name, email, phone number, and like I said, they know someone's calling them back, but they just don't know when and who, okay? That is what we consider an outbound lead. I'm not talking about cold calling, okay? Some of this can apply, so you might want to stay on. An inbound lead, some of this can apply as well, so you want to stay on with that, okay? Now, let me show you why this doesn't work most of the time. Now, this will work on laydown sales. So if they're really, really interested, this type of approach you can be okay at. However, that's how many of the leads that you talk to? 10%, maybe if you're lucky. What about all the other 90% that seem to get triggered by this, okay? Now, most salespeople, when they call leads, they either come in way too high-pitched. That means they're way excited, something like this. Hey, Annie, yeah, it's James Miller with XYZ Company. I saw you requested some, like the voice is too high-pitched, okay? Or even worse, this is actually worse, they sound monotone, like a telemarketer, like flatline, like this. Hi, is this Annie? Hi, Annie, it's James Miller with XYZ Company. I saw you requested some, it sounds like a telemarketer. Now, the problem with this is your prospects have built up, human beings have built up from our society, defensive mechanisms in our brain. That's in our survival part of the brain. A lot of people call that the reptilian part of your brain, and they built up survival mechanisms. So anytime they feel or that someone sounds like they're trying to sell them something, instantly I call it their spidey senses, okay? Their survival part of their brain goes into, oh, salesperson trying to sell me something, and the guard goes up. You see where I'm coming from? So if you sound like most salespeople that are way too excited, okay, or way too monotone, or even worse, timid, okay, like they have uncertainty, that triggers the prospect to say, not interested, call me back later, I'm too busy, I don't remember doing that. That tonality triggers that reaction because that's what they're used to what? Hearing from other salespeople that have ever tried to sell them anything. So we don't want to sound like that, okay? So I'm going to show you that. Now, let me show you a few instances why this doesn't work. I'm going to show you how to analyze this, okay? About our products or services. See, when you start talking about your products or services right here from the first question, you're focused on your solution. We want to focus more on the reason why they responded and the result of your solution, not just what your solution is. That is a big difference. And I'm going to show you some examples here in a second, all right? Now, this approach, if you say, is this a good time? Most prospects say what? They say, no, it's not. Okay, so don't ever use it. Don't say it's a good time. I'm going to show you how to change that, okay? Don't ever say, do you have 2 minutes to talk about our XYZ thing? Does the average prospect really believe you're only going to take 2 minutes of their time? Unlikely. And so if you do that, you're automatically causing them to trust you less. Like you're losing trust because they feel like you're not being honest here, okay? So it's going to lower your status in their brain. You don't want to do that. And you don't want to say information about blank surfaces. How are you doing today? Now, I know a lot of you have been told by your mother to be polite to strangers, but in a business setting, do you really believe the average prospect believes that you are genuinely interested in how their damn day is going, right? When a salesperson asks you in the first 1 minute, hey, how you doing today? Do you sit there and like, oh, that's so nice of the salesperson to ask me how my day is? You don't. You typically don't believe they really care. You know they're asking you that question because they're trying to do what? Build rapport, okay? And so that's why you notice a lot of your prospects, especially if they're A-type, when you ask them this, like, yeah, what's going on? You're instantly triggering sales resistance because every prospect is used to what? The same predictable questions that every salesperson has asked them, trying to sell them anything from, a rainbow vacuum cleaner to, pest control to financial services, life insurance, cybersecurity, a new car. It doesn't really matter. They ask the same predictable questions. You don't want to sound like everybody else, okay? Now, typically, sometimes, let's say if you triggered fight or flight mode, okay? Because you notice a lot of times they say, oh, I remember doing that. I'm just really busy right now. Can you call me back later or something like that? That's typically what happens when you use that approach, unless they're a laydown, okay? But I'm not showing you how to sell to laydowns because you wouldn't need me for that. You want to learn how to sell to who? Everybody that you can't close now, right? That's why companies come to 7th Level and us to learn how to sell that way with our training programs. Now, most people play the numbers game here. This is the numbers game approach. So the prospect says, can you call me back later? I'm real busy. When you agree, when you say, well, okay, yeah, when works best for you to call you back? I could call you back today or tomorrow or the next day. Or sure, when can I call you back? Okay. So all you did right there is you're just buying into their excuse. Okay. That is not something that an expert does necessarily. I'm going to show you some tweaks to that, all right? Because what that does, when you say, yeah, sure, I'll call you back when works best for you, you now go into what? Chase mode, okay? Now you are qualifying to the prospect. Now, you've probably been taught that this is the polite thing to do, okay? But now look how the prospect views you when you just say, sure, when can I call you back? Now you are qualifying to them. But the problem with that is, I want you to think about this. Who has the problems? You or the prospect? The prospect has the problems, not you. So why are you qualifying to them? Okay. You don't want to do that. I'm going to show you here in a second how to get the prospect to start qualifying to you because you're the one that can actually do what? Solve their problems. So we want to flip that script. Now we have to do that in a polite way. You can't be like a douche and make them defensive. We have to do it in a very skilled way, which I'm going to show you. Okay. Let's say the prospect says, yeah, sure. Call me tomorrow. Now, a lot of you might have been taught, like, I need to get some information from them before I call them back tomorrow. Well, hey, before I go, let me ask you a question. What's 2 challenges that keep you awake at night? Or what's 2 things that you really need help with? Or what are some problems that you're having right now? Now, let me show you why you don't want to ask this type of question, okay? And then I will show you a much better way to relanguage it. When you say, before I go, not even this is fine. But when you say, let me ask you a question, and then you just ask it, imagine how that feels in the prospect's brain. You're not really asking their permission. Okay, you're saying, let me ask you a question. And instead I could say, now before we get off, can I ask you something? See, now I'm asking for permission. It's hard for them to say, no, you can't. Okay, look at the verbal pacing I did with that. Can I ask you something before we get off? Sure, nobody's going to say no. Okay, so you don't want to say, let me ask you a question and steamroll. You want to pace it out like I did, okay? This question, 2 challenges, problems that keep you awake at night. Every salesperson asks that question, and they know where that question leads to. So that's why a lot of people, when you ask that type of question, will push back, especially A-types, and they'll say, well, I don't know, I'm just always looking for this or that, or I don't know, I'm just looking for some information, we might be interested, or, I'm actually doing pretty good. Let's say if you're selling something to a business is going great, and they might say, well, what's this all about? Okay, if you sell to a business. If you sell to somebody else, like a consumer, we would relanguage that a little bit, okay, like B2C sales, okay? And then what happens when they get defensive? Most salespeople have been taught to what? Well, they get defensive back. Well, I called because with our XYZ solutions, we can help you with blank and meet your business needs. In fact, we've been ranked the #1 service company in the market the last 3 years in a row, blah, 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 blah. See, now you get into defensive mode, trying to justify your position and why you can fulfill their business needs. You're ranked #1 in the market with the service the last 3 years in a row, which, by the way, doesn't every salesperson say they have the #1 product or service? How many salespeople do you know that try to sell you something that say, Jim, we're the 17th best in the market? Nobody does. Everybody says they're the best. So when you say things like that, even if it's true, most of your prospects don't believe you because they've heard that so many times from every salesperson in any industry selling them something. So they actually trust you less. I'm going to show you how to reword that to seed that in their brain much better where they don't get defensive. Okay, now let's say there could be different things they say here, but let's say they come back, oh yeah, I'm good in this area. Like, I appreciate your time, but I'm probably not interested. And what do? You get more defensive. Well, why did you respond to the ad? I've got a solution that's so exciting that's going to help you cut your costs by blank and increase your revenue by blank. When could you spend 10 to 15 minutes where I can show you how this can work for your company or whatever it is? Now, if you're calling a consumer, we would reword that. That's very generic, and I'll show you how to make that more industry specific in a minute, okay? You're just gonna get defensive, and that triggers more resistance in the prospect's mind. Does that sound familiar? Okay, we don't want you to have to go through it anymore because you don't have to. You just haven't been taught how to do this the right way. Look, it's not your fault that you are having these issues where prospects are going to fight or flight mode, right? You might have been taught that by your company or put that in a script, or maybe some guru you read in a book or went through a training program and showed you that wasn't maybe that successful in sales when they were in sales themselves, or maybe they hadn't sold for a long time. It's not your fault, but it is your what? It is your problem, right? Okay, so I'm going to show you how to fix that. Okay, so come back over here, all right? Now, these are what are called NEPQ connection questions. Now, if you're one of our clients, you would already know this, but that stands for Neuro Emotional Persuasion Questioning. This comes from my background in behavioral science and human psychology. I went to school, university, to become a psychologist, okay? So I just love the way the brain works, all right? Now, let me show you how to do this. I'm going to take a drink of water because my mouth is getting thirsty here. Oh, pro tip #1, when you're speaking or when you're talking to an audience, or maybe you're talking to a prospect or several prospects, drink hot water, not boiling where you're going to have boils in your tongue where it burns you, but not lukewarm, a little bit hot, clears up your vocal cords, allows you to talk more with your diaphragm. I even have a cold today. I'm still talking a little bit like that. Okay, now I want to show you how to do this. Yeah, is John there? Yeah, John, hey, it's James Miller with XYZ Company. You asked us to call you back. Looks like you responded to the ad this morning on YouTube about, and then you're going to repeat back the end result of what you sell, okay? Now, I'm going to show you what I just did here, okay? Yeah, is John there? Yeah, John, hey, it's James Miller with XYZ Company. Now, what did I just do there? It's James Miller. What type of tone does that sound like? That is what we call a familiar tone, okay? Now, there's 5 types of tonality that you have to master if you want to get into the top 1% of salespeople in your industry, okay? And one of those is a curious tone. And there are subcategories of those tones. One subcategory of a curious tone is a familiar tone because it does what? It triggers curiosity, right? If you ever get a call from somebody like, hey, it's Amy Smith, how are you? With that type of tone, what do you say? Yeah, I'm doing great. How are you doing? And why do you do that? Because it sounds like Amy already knows you And your brain starts doing this, what, who's Amy Smith? Who's Amy Smith? Where did I meet her? You would never say, who is this? Because they use a familiar tone. But if I said, hi, John, it's James Miller with XYZ Company, and you keep talking, you sound like a salesperson or a monotone robot. Here, I'm using that familiar tone. And notice these 3 periods here. This is very nuanced what I'm going to show you, but will definitely help you sell a lot more. That's what's called a verbal pause, okay? So verbal pause helps slow down your questions and your statements that actually trigger their brain to have to pay attention to you more. The faster you talk to a prospect, especially at the beginning of a conversation when they don't know you, the more you sound like a what? Salesperson trying to sell them something, because that's what they're used to from everybody that's ever tried to sell them, right? You try to spit out as much information you can so you can hope and pray they're going to listen to it, okay? You don't want to sound like that. Yeah, it's James Miller with XYZ Company. You asked us to call you back. Now, why did I say that? Why would I say you asked us to call you back? Because if they put in their name, email, phone number, and hit submit, they're asking you to call them back. They're raising their hand, basically saying, help me. I think I have some type of problem. Otherwise, they never would have responded to the ad. They would have never put in their information. Would we be right? Okay. Now, so I'm actually doing this. This is causing their brain to stay honed in with me. It triggers curiosity. Yeah, you asked us to call you back. It looks like you responded to the ad. I think it was this morning on YouTube about, now let's say if I sold for a marketing agency and I'm selling like higher quality leads. You asked us to, you responded to the ad this morning on YouTube about getting like a higher quality lead so you could grow the business, right? So if I sold leads or a marketing agency, the end result of that was to grow the business. That's why they buy leads. They're not just buying leads. Let's say if I sold solar, okay, which is a huge industry, we train it. You responded to the ad this morning on YouTube about maybe locking in your rate and lowering your bill, right? See, that's the end result of solar. Let's say if I sold financial service, responded to the ad this morning on YouTube about maybe getting a higher rate of return so you could retire earlier, right? See, I'm selling the end result. I'm talking about the end result. You with me on that? So imagine what you sell. What would be the end result of what you sell, not just the thing you sell? That's the difference, okay? Let me give you another example. So let's say if I sold business consulting, the end result would be maybe putting in operational systems so they could scale the business. Responded to the ad this morning on YouTube about maybe looking at some possible help with putting in operational systems to really grow the business, right? So I'm ending with that question, right? And what did I do before that? Operational systems so that you can scale the business. Because if I'm selling business consulting, what's the end result? Scale, grow the business more profitably. That's the end result, not the consulting itself. That's what I'm doing. Now, I'm going to show you why this is so important to you, okay? Why do I do this? Because I want to get them into results-based thinking from the very beginning. Because if I asked you, what's the number one thing you think about when any salesperson starts talking to you? What's the number one thing that goes through your mind? Do you got it? How much is this going to what? Cost. How much is it going to cost? What's the price? That's what you start to think. It doesn't matter if it's an inbound conversation with the salesperson on the doors, in a company setting, at a home, on a phone. You're thinking, how much is this going to cost? Would be right. That's one of the things that your prospects are thinking. Now, I'm going to show you something. Hang with me because I'm going to show you how to make this more industry specific in a second. Now, as a psychologist, when I was in school, okay, the way that we were taught to view patients, which would be like a prospect, and I'm going to show you to view this very easily, is that every human being you talk to, every prospect has frames, okay? And that is their way of thinking. So every person, based on where you grew up, who raised you, maybe the church you went to, who was around you, maybe who you followed on social media if you're younger, influenced you and your way of thinking. That way of thinking is called a frame, okay, with a patient. This comes actually from Sigmund Freud a long time ago. So every prospect you talk to has a way of thinking. Now, every prospect thinks what at the beginning? How much is it going to cost? How much is the price? So what you have to do, which I'm going to help you show in a minute, is take them out of that frame or out of that way of thinking. That is called a D-frame, which I'm going to show you that in a second. So you're going to take them out of that way of thinking, price or cost-based thinking, okay? I'm deframing them, and then I'm going to reframe them. That's the process into a new frame or a new way of thinking, So how do I, in this example, let's say this frame, cost or price, how much is it going to cost me? I want to take them out of this way of thinking, deframe them, and reframe them into a new way of thinking, which is results-based thinking, where now I take their mind off the price or cost into the result and the reason why they responded to the ad in the first place. Are you getting what I'm dropping down for you? Type in yes or no in the comments if that just made sense. Type in yes or no in the comments so I can see when I come back and watch this video with my team if this is making sense to you, okay? Now, now this would be my second, can't spell today, connection question, okay? Hey, for you spelling bee Nazis out there, are you gonna make fun of me? Okay, I'm just making sure, right? Okay, just making sure. It's okay sometimes to spell things a little bit wrong when I write it out fast. Maybe I'll hire you guys to come here and write this out, okay? All right, so here would be the second question. Hey, so when you saw the ad where we were going over X and Y and Z, what was it that they were talking about that caused you to, want to look into this further? Okay. Now, what did I do here? So when you saw the ad, this is somebody who responded to an ad. If they filled out some type of form, it could be, we would tweak this a little bit. Okay. I'll do that in probably a different training video. Hey, so when you went through the ad where they were going over X and Y and Z, what was it that they were talking about that caused you to, want to look into this further? See how I'm being neutral, that caused you to want to look into this further. Some of us have been taught to go assumptive here, like, what was it about the ad that really caused you to want to talk to me? It's a little bit too much, too early, because how much trust or credibility do you have in the first 1 minute of a conversation? Hardly any, right? I have to build that trust, so I first have to get them to let their guard down, okay? So I'm going to be more neutral here with what I'm saying. I'm going to use more neutral languaging, like, cause you to want to look into this further. Nobody's ever going to say, well, I'm not looking into this further. Nobody's ever going to say that, okay? Oh, that was weird. It's a good pattern interrupt. Did somebody do that here? We should keep this on that video. That was crazy. I love that, okay? Did you like that as well? Okay. Now, why do we do that? Because it puts the focus on them, takes it off you. Connection questions are there to take them out of cost or price-based thinking. Remember the frame, okay? And I'm going to get them into results-based thinking, the new frame, okay? And they're there to help disarm the prospect to get them to let their guard down. Now, actually, I want to ask you right here, how many of you get to a point sometimes where you ask questions in the beginning and the prospect seems guarded? Like they give you yes or no, like they give you vague, generalized, surface level answers. How many of you have seen that? Okay, look, and also a lot of you ask, how do I tie this into my industry? So if you have questions on this, I'm going to have you, let's just have you text me here. Actually, let me put the screen here. So text me at 480-637-2944, okay? That's the easiest way to get a hold of me if you have questions about how do I do this for my industry, Jeremy? Because what you just showed me is kind of generic. So text me right there and we will get back to you on that, okay? All right, now let's come over here. Third connection question, okay? Yeah, and the first part of this call, well, okay, so let's say you go through this and they're like, well, I like this and I'm looking at this, and they're going to start to tell you some information that you store up here so you know where to go with the conversation. Okay, the third connection question. Yeah, in the first part of this call, it's pretty basic. It's really more for us to find out kind of what you're using now for blank and the results you're getting from that compared to maybe where you're wanting those to be, to kind of see what that gap looks like. And then towards the end of the call, if you feel like, hey, this might be what you're looking for, we can talk about possible next steps. Would that help you? Now, this is what we call a status frame, okay? If you have questions about how to do status frames to raise your status in your prospect's brain, just text me here. Typically, I lock myself into the conference room with about 3 sales trainers, about an hour a day, and we just respond to your questions when you text us on that number, okay? Sometimes on the weekends too, but yeah, just text. Okay, now, right here, let me show you what I just did. You want me to show you? Okay. The first part of this call is pretty basic. Now, why would I downplay it? Why not say, this call is going to be really exciting. I'm going to show you. Because what are they used to most salespeople doing? Being really, really enthusiastic. Now, I don't want to be down here and all the way boring either. I don't want to be timid, but I don't want to be too enthusiastic. I need to be more in the middle, like an expert is, right? Collective, confident, calm. That's how experts are. They're not way too excited because they don't need your business. They've got tons of business because why? They solve a lot of problems. They're the best at what they do, okay? But they're also not timid. That's a big difference. They're not boring. They're right in the middle, okay? Now, more about what you're doing now. Look at my hand movements here. Now, especially if they can see me, the hand movements are very, very important because I'm going to visually create a gap in their mind. Even if you're on the phone and they can't see, you're still going to use your hand movements because your body language affects your what? Your tonality, right? If you're just sitting here like this in a chair and you're not even moving at all and your face is the same, boring, like monotone face equals a monotone tone. Your facial expressions are the remote control to your tonality. Write that down. That's very important to you, okay? More about what you're doing now for blank and kind of the results look at where I see, and the results you've been getting from that. Now, depending on what you sell, we would tweak this, obviously. This frame would have to be tweaked if I sold cybersecurity to banks compared to if I was selling health insurance to a consumer. It wouldn't make any sense, okay? But the results you're getting from blank, look at where the results you're getting from blank compared to maybe where you're wanting those to be. Look how I've made that gap to see what that gap looks like. See what I'm doing there? And then towards the end of the call, if you feel like, hey, this might be what you're looking for, notice I'm still neutral here. It might be what you're looking for. We can talk about possible next steps. Now, why am I still neutral here? Remember, the first 2 minutes of the conversation, how much trust or credibility do I have? Not that much. I am going to have more trust and credibility as I get further in this conversation and build a gap from where they are to where they want to be. But I want to be more neutral here because a lot of us get too assumptive here. And towards the end of the call, if you feel like, hey, this is what you're looking for, I'll show you how to get started. Fair enough? And then what happens a lot with A-type personalities? Oh, well, I'm just still kind of looking, just gathering information. I'm not ready to make a move yet. And what just happened? You just triggered their guard up. Like the resistance just came up and now you got to break it down. When you use neutral language in here at the beginning, might be or possible next steps, nobody's ever going to say, no, we cannot talk about possible next steps. It's neutral, right? See what we're doing there? Now, the last connection question I want to use, and I wouldn't use this on all industries. There are some differences with the tweaks. And just so I understand, what were you hoping could happen by possibly working with us? Now, notice how I'm putting that back on them. And just so I understand, what were you hoping could possibly happen by working with us? What were you hoping could happen by possibly working with us? Notice I'm still neutral, possibly working with us. Nobody will ever object to that because I'm neutral. I put the neutral word right before working with us. But notice I put what were you hoping could happen? Remember how I talked about most salespeople qualify to the prospect, but the prospect is the one that has the problems? So I'm showing you how to flip that script where you start to reframe their way of thinking, where now the prospect here is starting to come your way and qualifying to you because now they're going to start telling you what they're hoping would happen. Okay, hoping what would happen. Well, I'm hoping that we can get more leads. I'm hoping that, I can increase my coverage. I'm hoping that, I can reduce my rate hikes from last year. I'm hoping that, I can get a better vehicle that gets better gas mileage, depending on what you sell. Okay. Now, all right. So if you have questions, because I know a lot of you typically will have questions in the comments, because I read these comments actually. So I want you to put in the comments what you got from this video and also what you would like to see me train on next so I can actually make some content around that. Now, if you have questions about, Jeremy, how do I make this industry specific for what I sell? The easiest way to get a hold of me is just to text me on my cell. So 480-637-2944. And you can ask me any question. Like I said, I lock myself in a room, our conference room right over here in this suite next to me with about 2 or 3 sales trainers, about an hour and a half a day. And we quite literally answer hundreds of questions when you text this number. So go ahead and text me. And also make sure you subscribe to this channel and you get notified. I typically will release about 2 training videos a week here. That way you get notified. Hope that helped you today. And remember, I started 7th level here to change the way sales is perceived in society. One salesperson, one company at a time. Hope that helped you. And I'll see you if you text me. Take care.